Hey guys, it's Coop from Garage Gym Reviews, and today we have a review between these two resistant sleds that are silent and use magnetic resistance instead of weight. This is the Torque Fitness Tank M1. Really one of the most popular sleds that's available today. Up to this point, you'll find out what I think after this. My favorite, the one that I use the most often, and the only sled that I have in my garage gym, versus the new contender. This is the Xebex XT3 from Xebex Fitness. This is essentially trying to do what this does, but better and with more features. But by adding more features, does it simply become a multi-unit, like a all-in-one printer that sucks at all of them? Or is it superior in both price, features, and quality to this one? All right, before we start, this is a product category that we have a lot of content on. Outdoor sleds is something that is like essential for garage gyms. So if you'd like to see any of that, or you'd like to see these, check the links below the like button. If you're into this sort of content, make sure you subscribe because we're gonna keep coming out with better and better content. And if you like this video, make sure you like it because it helps us with the algorithm. If we do anything in this video that you're like, man, Coop, I wish you would have talked about this. I wish you would have compared it to this. Make sure you comment because that's how we get product ideas and video ideas. Okay, but today I'm gonna start by giving you an overview of each. I'm gonna start with the Tank M1, talk you through it. I have a full video on this, so I'm not gonna go into crazy depth, but then I'm gonna go into more depth on the XT3 because it's a newer sled. We're getting a lot of questions about it. I will then show you what they're like to actually perform in sled drags, wheelbarrow pushes, sled pulls, reverse sled drags, that sort of thing, and see how they compare both on the resistance side and just the general use side. I will then talk through which one I think is superior for most people and how they kind of situate. Okay, first, let's start with the M1. The Tank M1 is by a company called Torque Fitness. And Torque Fitness is really the originators or one of the most popular companies that's making magnetic resisted sleds. The first magnetic resistant sled that I ever came across was the XPO sled. We have two of them. They are good sleds, but they are an older design. They have since been improved in every way by Torque Fitness and now Xebex as well, and maybe some other companies. This is their most refined model and is really the model they made designed for the home gym. Their other tanks are very good, but they feature a quad wheel design that takes up a lot of space and just isn't as mobile. It's not as light. It can't store up on the wall like this one can. It does offer maybe some additional features and the ability to have handles on both sides and that it may have increased resistance, but for most home gym owners, this has been, in my opinion, my most recommended option for home gym owners. And I don't just like talk the talk, I actually practice it. This is the sled that I use most often. I have a wall hanger in my garage that I put it on and I use it often. And one of the reasons that these just in general, especially this one, is so nice is the fact that most sleds require you to put a ton of weight on. The only reason you really put weight on either of these sleds is simply to keep the front wheel down. That way it still has contact with the ground and is maintaining resistance. The resistance that comes from this is all from this magnetic chain drive within the front wheel that is resisting you as you push. And the harder you push, the more it resists, kind of like an air bike. It's like exponential. But the reason that's nice is because you don't have to load a ton of weight on these to start using them, which I always talk about. The more friction you add to your training, the less likely you're going to do it, which that means the less likely you're going to reach your goals. So I love items, even if they're more expensive, that are removing the friction, like a sled where you have to take the sled off, a heavy sled, you have to load it with a bunch of weight, you have to drag it out to the driveway, you then have to make a ton of noise, you're scraping the ground. It's just not ideal for any home gym owner. These fix that. And the M1 works really well because it's simple. It has 4 different resistance modes. It has a neutral, which is no resistance, either forward or back. It has 1, which is some resistance, both forward and back, and that's for all of these. It has resisted going this way or this way, then 2, and then 3. And the 3, as I'll talk about, is one of the highest resistance out of any magnetic resisted sled that's out there, including the XT3, which I'll talk about is one of the cons for that versus this one. But the other benefit is you can push either way. So I can go from this way with multiple handles. These are removable, by the way. They aren't fully secure, They don't have any pop pins or anything like that, and they do shake a little bit, which is a little bit annoying, but they allow you to push from top, from low, or if I want to go the other way, I can also do this low handle and push it here, or if I'm not using it, I can store it out of the way. The other thing you can do with this is it also has this like D hanger on here. You can attach a carabiner to and also a strap, and then you can do sled drags or sled pulls. Something we see a lot of people doing today because of Ben Patrick at Knees Over Toes guy is reverse sled drags, which are great for the knee, which is building up the quad, like something I do a lot. This allows you to do that. You just got to make sure you put a lot of weight on there. Outside of that, the construction is really well done. The powder coat is an outdoor powder coat. It's really long lasting, it's quite gritty. Honestly, for any outdoor application, the powder coat that Torque uses is some of my favorite. It has a short weight horn, so you're not gonna use a ton of weight on here, but you don't really need to because you're just using it to place the weight down. At 67 pounds, it's both easy to push and use and move out to the street, everything like that, while also being easy to hang up on the wall when you're mounting it. But Xebex has basically taken the features that Tank and Torque has here and have a lot of similar things that they're offering while offering some additional ones. Okay, let's talk about the XT3. This is Xebex's answer to the Torque Fitness Tank. Xebex, by and large, has been a company that sees other designs out there and figures out how can we make them cheaper and add some extra features to them. Perfect example is their rowers, their ski ergs. I'm not saying they're necessarily fully a copycat company, but they are taking large inspiration from other companies that are out there and try and improve upon them. Now, you can be the judge of whether that's good or bad, but I'd say we're all built on the foundation of our grandfathers, so we're all learning and taking inspiration from others, and this is an example of that. This has a very similar design, fit, and finish, and feel to the Torque Fitness Tank. It's got pretty much the same traction and tire on the front, using very similar resistance. Now, there are some differences, okay? And basically, Xebex was like, all right, how can we take the basic functionality of the tank M1 while adding some additional ones to it? And these are what's additional. One, it has more magnetic resistance levels. So it has all the way from 1 to 8. That one has 4, this one has 8. Is more options better? I'll talk about that in a moment. The other addition that they added to it was a longer post. This allows you to have more weight. And the reason that you'd want more weight on this, as I've said previously, it doesn't really matter when you're doing just horizontal resistance, when you're just pushing against it. You really just need enough weight on there to keep the front foot down. But the reason that this is a smart feature is because the other feature that Xebex added to XT3, and that is the ability to go from a horizontal push sled to also a wheelbarrow. You may be asking yourself, why the freak would I want a wheelbarrow? It's because it builds massive traps, massive back, massive forearms, bro. But why would I want it in a sled? I think the reason you want it in a sled is because it basically allows you to have one tool that you can use for multiple modes. Now, would I buy this personally because it has a wheelbarrow? Not necessarily, and here's why. Because the resisted element of this isn't really that helpful to a wheelbarrow. It's not like I turn up the resistance on this, get on the back of the wheelbarrow, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use this like this, because it's just not comfortable, it doesn't work well. But the nice thing about it is you have this big loading pin here. You can stack up to an additional 225 pounds on here. If it's using the 3-wheel design, you can put up to 385, which means you can stack a little bit of good weight on here and then use it as a wheelbarrow. The other way is you can use it what they call X-Drive, which allows you to use it kind of you would on like a football element, like linemen use when they're trying to like drive through. Very similar to that. So there's basically bearing on your shoulders and then handles here to hold, and you can drive through, which feels pretty darn good. The other thing is you can use it also for sled drags and some of the other elements I talked about with the Torque tank, but it uses hangers down below. Now, hangers down below, they have pluses and minuses. One of the minuses, because they're down low, it has a tendency to lift up the front wheel more often because you're pulling them. And one of the most important things is that this is placed down low. One way to overcome that is just put more weight on the back. And then lastly, and this is a secondary feature, not every model has this, and I'd only recommend this particular model if you would actually find benefit from this, but it also includes a monitor. And the monitor is very similar to what we see on ergs from like rower and ski ergs and that sort of thing. Not as good as a PM5, but not really that bad. It allows you to have a monitor to track your progress, to time everything like that. The other model have a phone mount so you can track things that way. Now, it's another 110 bucks that you have to add to it, but it is a nice feature because there are a lot of people that are doing longer steady state stuff on sleds, and you can use it either way. So if you want to look this way, or you can point it back and look this way. The only problem is it doesn't have a flipping screen. That's a feature that I would have liked to see if it flipped 180, and then you could use it when you're pressing from this direction and it just automatically see it when you folded it down. Now, one other component that needs to be mentioned is the storability. These are going in home gyms. Leaving it like this probably isn't the best use of your space. What they allowed is basically to take the handles off, flip it up, and then store on the back side, and you can simply place the handles in so it's stored out of the way and then ready to be used when you want to use it. Okay, so those are overviews of both of them. Now let's show you what they kind of look like when you're using them in training. So now which one do I recommend? After being able to use both of them and kind of go through the features on them, it's not as clear cut as I kind of thought it would be. This one is actually pretty close, and I think there's reasons you buy one of these or the other. These are very similar priced. In fact, like Xebex came out with this one, basically offered more features and said, hey, we're gonna beat you on features, not on price, and so we're gonna offer it at a very similar price. This tank M1 is around 850 bucks with free shipping. This one is less, except they charge shipping, so when it finally totals out, at least to me in the Midwest, it's the same price. It's right around 849 bucks. So it's the same cost really for both. If you want to add the monitor, which is another feature, it's another $110. So you have to decide if that's something you'd use. Personally, I wouldn't use it enough, so I don't find it necessary. I'm never using this and I'm like, man, I really wish I had a monitor. I don't really mind that much. I just use my phone. The shortcomings is, yeah, it has some additional features, but the quality isn't at the same level. That's not to say it's bad. They're using more metal components. For instance, this shroud is all metal. The one on this one is plastic, but I've never felt like this one being plastic was worse than this one because that's not really a wear component. There's nothing sitting there, there's nothing touching it, and it's very well refined and molded and done really well. The other thing is the resistance levels. This one does have more resistance levels, but the first 3 or so really offer negligible, if any, resistance actually in use. I would never really use those. I would go from like probably 5 would be a starting point, which would feel similar to maybe Torqued M1's 1, and then 6, 7, and 8. Like that would be similar to what they're offering over there. Although there's more numbers, it's not really offering any more resistance. And also just during use, the M1 feels like it has significantly more resistance at the top end. So if you're somebody that's just looking for like the highest resistance, the M1 definitely feels like it has more resistance. Now the big benefit to this one is twofold. One, that it stores upright, so you don't have to lift it up and put it somewhere. It's heavy, so you really wouldn't want to, so it's a good thought that they added the storage upright. I think that was a good idea. The other thing that this offers that doesn't, and if you would use this, I would definitely recommend it, is the wheelbarrow. Personally, I probably wouldn't do a ton of wheelbarrows. I just do more farmer's walks. But if you're somebody who likes that sort of training, you want to get farm strong, then this is a way that you can do that. Take these handles off, put them in there, load this up, and then you can use it as a wheelbarrow. However, for me, if you're like, Coop, which one are you going to store in your garage? Which one are you going to use most often? It's still going to be this one. I like the simplicity of it. I actually don't mind the wall hanger. It works in my garage the way I have it set up. It gives me places to put it up, store it out of the way. I do prefer the higher D-ring up here. Because it's higher, I feel like it prevents it from lifting up more often. I never really feel like that's a problem anyways when I put enough weight on here. I like that it folds down out of the way when I'm not using it. I like that I can take the handles off simply. And I also like the better powder coat. But overall, like, this isn't the answer everybody wants to hear, but these are so similar, I don't think you can go wrong either way. Initially, I saw some people that were complaining about this one maybe not having a ton of resistance at the high end, but honestly, when I looked into it, the only reason is because they weren't putting enough weight on the pin, so this was always contacting the ground. So long as you're making sure that front wheel has enough contact with the ground, you're gonna feel a lot of resistance. Okay, this is Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. Was there any features or anything I missed? Let me know in the comments. Are there any that you'd like us compare these to? Let me know in the comments as well, and we will see you next time.